Lucas graciously invited this session to happen, so I'm really grateful for his help. He's also going to be kind of acting as the proxy and asking questions for us when we get into the pre-submitted questions portion, and then we're going to aim to leave at least 20 to 30 minutes at the end of the session for all of you to ask kind of real-time questions as we go forward. And then, like we mentioned earlier, we will share the recordings with you within a couple days as soon as we can kind of catch up with administrative tasks. Okay, so to get started, before we jump into the pre-submitted questions, I think it's helpful for us all to have a little bit of background on the CVIP guidance, the ICE guidance. Lucas, if you are able, can you share your screen of the Google document so that there's a little bit of text for people to follow along with? So like I mentioned, I'm really excited and happy to be here. I am so sorry that the transition for me happened during such a turbulent time and period. I was coming in part-time, and there was the new CVIP guidance for us. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Sorry, let me back up. I also wanted to thank you all for your patience through that. And I want to thank the helpers that we've had here tonight and the students that have offered their support through these first days. So let's talk about ISS programs, what we are doing and how things might look going forward. International Student Orientation is still on. The date for that is being held for the 20th of August. And we might overflow a little bit into the 21st, but more information on that will come. Interconnect Mentors, I've had a couple questions. That is definitely still on. I really am looking forward to your help and support in that program. I am still trying to catch up on kind of getting in touch with all of our mentors and how that will look, and getting mentors connected with the mentees, but that is still on. We will host as much as we are possibly capable of for fall events. The most likely scenario is that there will be a lot of virtual events, maybe like this, or information sharing, one-on-one connections, maybe with mentee mentors virtually. And if we might see some smaller group activities that can be done outside when possible. Any of the gatherings are really going to be dependent on local guidance and the college protocols at the time. But definitely we're looking forward to a fall of events to keep everybody connected. Host families, it is painful for me to say, but we will need to suspend the host family program for the fall. For me, host families are a really valuable resource and support to international students. I've had the benefit of having a really great host family experience in the past. And we, for a number of reasons, we're not able to run that program in the fall, in part my capacity, also in part just not having enough known about how we can connect people in person or in those ways right now in Portland. But we are looking forward to possibly having that return as early as this winter. So more information on that will come. ISS advising, I as an ISS program director staff and also our Interconnect mentors will be available. I'm going to aim to have virtual access for advising for all of our students with some availability early in the morning and also late at night in Portland or later in the night in Portland so that students in other time zones have access to us. There can be some in-person sessions as needed, but the guidance from the college is to minimize that as much as possible and save in-person sessions for high need situations. The ISS office and the conference room are still to be determined in terms of what is allowed for the college. Okay, so then moving forward, the CVIP and the ICE activity over the last week. I know it's been a lot of stress and confusion As background, in March, the Student Exchange Visitor Program, they gave guidance to schools in the United States that were starting to transition into online learning due to the spread of COVID-19 in the United States. That had been guidance that was carried through for the spring and the summer terms. And now, just last week, we got new guidance that changed a lot of really important pieces of what we had been making plans based on. Gratefully, a court case filed by Harvard and MIT, also supported by Reed and lots of other schools, pushed back very quickly. And that resulted in yesterday a decision being made that the government is rescinding the July guidance, and now we're going back to the Student Exchange Visitor Program guidance that was given in March. So we're sorry for all of that confusion, but ultimately we're really glad that the July guidance was rescinded, and I was really happy to hear all of the support from Reed for international students. If you need to see the guidance from March, you can see that by clicking through the ICE link that's in the email that shared the Zoom links for the session. Okay, what does this mean now for all of us? We have students in lots of different scenarios as new incoming students and also returning Reed students inside the United States, outside the United States. So I'm going to start with the new students. If you are a new student coming to Reed for the beginning of your program and you're outside the United States, you may begin your program with Reed online. You will not have your F1 status start until you physically arrive in the United States. For these students, I will be updating the start date in your I-20 and getting that to you and communicating with you about that in August. Okay, so that's going to postpone your start date back to spring if you're not able to be here in time for the August starts of the semester. New Reed students, if you are in the United States or you know that you can get into the United States in time to start the semester in August, you may start your program online, entirely online, or with in-person course components, and you will be able to start and maintain an active F1 status. You don't need an I-20 update. Okay, returning Reed students. I think somebody else's audio is coming through if you want to check your audio settings. Returning Reed students. Outside the United States, if you're there and you are planning to stay outside the US, you can now continue your Reed program through the fall semester online, and we can also maintain your F1 status. The key is that you need to maintain a full-time enrollment of 3 credits. You need to make normal progress as usual, and you need to follow all of the normal F1 reporting requirements, like notifying me of a change of address, notifying me if your major changes or your program dates in your I-20 change. Okay, and then returning students that are here inside the United States or can get back into the United States, you can also start your Reed program online or in person. We can maintain your active F1 status, but you also must maintain full-time enrollment, make normal progress, and follow the same reporting requirements as usual. For work, you are still under the same rules for employment. You can work on campus right away, and you can work off campus only with OPT authorization. If there's any students here that are on active OPT, post-completion OPT after you've graduated, there's not really any changes for you. It's the same reporting requirements, no need to update your I-20 or your record. And then, let's see, Lucas, do you mind scrolling down? Another point to clarify is that last week, CVIP had said we needed to update everybody's I-20s, and that has been rescinded, so we don't need to update all of the I-20s for all of the students. That might be more of a relief for me than for all of you, but it is definitely a relief. That's a lot of I-20s. Okay, so Lucas, why don't you unmute yourself, and then you can begin asking questions on behalf of your student colleagues.
Yeah, so just before I start asking the questions, I just want to let everyone know that I'll be running through this list that we've compiled based on submissions that All of you and other international students have submitted on the Google form. Once we're done with all these questions, we will take follow-up questions and new questions. So I just ask that you save those to the end, and we'll leave time for that. If you would prefer not to actually speak and verbalize your questions, you can send them in the chat at the end, and I'll read them out for you. Okay, I'm going to start with the first question. So will the status of F1 visas be affected if the students choose to leave the US and remain outside for more than one semester?
Yeah. So for this question, a current Reed student, they can keep their F1 status active as long as they're maintaining full-time enrollment. So as long as you have 3 credits, at least for the fall semester, and you continue to report any change in address, change in program, you make normal progress, you're working towards graduation, you can keep your F1 status active for the fall, even if you are outside the United States. There's something called the 5-month rule. So if somebody with a current F1 record and a SEVIS record has had that record terminated for a reason, for authorized early withdrawal or other reasons, if the student has the record terminated and leaves the United States and is outside the United States for more than 5 months from the date that their record was terminated, then you will need a new initial I-20 in order to come back. You'll also need to repay the SEVIS fee, which is a $350 fee, and you might need a new visa depending on whether your visa, you had one, or whether your visa has expired. So those issues would be good for us to connect on individually.
Next question, how do the SEVP regulations affect on-campus student work?
Yeah, so for that March guidance that we're now using for our plan for the fall, it does not make any change to on-campus work. It's the same rules for F1 students as it's been. F1 students can only work on campus up to 20 hours a week during academic sessions, or if you have optional practical training, OPT, that's been authorized, you can work off campus. And then for the college rules right now, at this time, only students physically in Oregon are allowed to telework. That might get updated at some point, but right now, only students in Oregon can work kind of on campus and telework.
So what would happen to international students after Thanksgiving since Reed plans to go online?
Based on this guidance from March, you can stay in the US, you can maintain your F1 status, and then Residence Life is also working on providing housing for international students over the winter break in this case.
If I do decide to come and attend physical college in spring 2021, will I be able to apply for on-campus housing?
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking that this is probably a new student. I don't know if it matters for returning students also, but yes, you can apply for spring 2021 housing. Please make sure that you're contacting Residence Life if that changes your fall housing application, and contact them early to get in touch about spring 2021 so that they can plan ahead.
Sorry, on that question, just if you could expand a little bit. I read this as including current students who are sort of virtual in the fall and want to be physical in the spring.
So if there is a student that's planning, a current student coming back looking for housing in spring, if you had a fall application in for on-campus housing, make sure that you get in contact with Residence Life as soon as possible about your fall. If you are interested in spring, reach out to Residence Life about the spring. I think that will be for returning students on a space available basis, but they will, I believe they will try and prioritize international students.
Next question, how strict will the on-campus arrival windows be? in relation to flight arrival time and at what time of day that they arrive.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that a lot of it's difficult to plan your international flights, and they oftentimes run late. But the arrival windows are pretty strict, so make sure that you're contacting Residence Life to coordinate. Um, if possible, you might want to arrive in Portland like a day early, so that you have wiggle room to arrive, get settled maybe at a hotel, um, and then travel to Reed from somewhere in Portland to make it on time for your arrival time would be a suggestion for minimizing that.
Can move-in dates be figured out earlier so that we can arrange flight or travel tickets?
Yeah, so Residence Life, as I understand, does not have capacity to allow earlier move-in for students coming in, both new students and returning students. So make sure that you're contacting them about your plan. It might involve arriving in Portland and then having an alternative accommodation until Residence Life can get you in.
Can I just jump in real quick to maybe explain some context?
Yeah,
I
that'd
think
be helpful.
so. When students arrive on campus, they're going to be screened for COVID-19 and asked to quarantine for a little bit of time while they wait for those results. And so we have to really stagger the arrivals very carefully to manage our testing capacity and our just sort of tracking capacities. And so Res Life will be assigning folks move-in dates, and if it doesn't work for you, as Gwen has said, please reach out to them so that they can troubleshoot what's going to need to happen instead. But we're going to be really looking for only extreme reasons to make exceptions, I think, because everything has to happen really lockstep in order to get folks ready for potentially in-person classes just 2 weeks after arrival. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. Then I think if people can see Lucas's screen, you'll see, again, we're kind of referring these Residence Life questions out to Residence Life. So let's see, well, I can read. So should I sign up for a move in time if it's unlikely I'll get a visa in time for the fall? Again, contact Residence Life about your housing application. And then the question about switching rooms, if campus housing has changed for a lot of people, can we switch rooms? Probably not. There's a lot of planning, like Julie mentioned, about strategically putting students in groups together. So watch for the information from Residence Life and also reach out to them with these types of questions about scheduling and room availability. And then I'll hand it back over to Lucas for the academics and F1 status.
Okay, so the next question, as far as I know, to be considered full-time in an undergraduate program, I will need to enroll in at least 12 credit hours each semester during the academic year. Is that right?
Really great question. I had this question too, coming from a different university that requires a 12 credit hour minimum for international students. Something I learned in the last couple of weeks is that at Reed, 3 credits is considered a full-time enrollment for F1 students. And so for SEVP, for the Student Exchange Visitor Program, the guidance is that it's full-time as required by the college or university. So for new Reed students, you need to have at least 3 credits at Reed in order to be a full-time F1 student. And then, oh yeah.
Will online credits I obtain in the fall semester count for the degree obtaining credit requirement?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so our online courses being counted towards your degree, yes. Definitely work with your academic advisor to make sure that you're taking the courses that are tracking you for your graduation plan or for your forward movement. Julie, did you want to jump in for anything else there?
Just all the classes that are being offered by Reed are real Reed classes that get you real Reed credit and can meet group requirements, major requirements. We're even doing PE, so it's all happening. And when the schedule comes out on Monday, you'll be able to tell whether a class is mostly in person, but with the option of taking it from another location, mostly in person without that option, totally online, nothing will ever happen in a shared space, or mostly online and a few things will happen in a shared space. So more information to come. Please reach out to your advisors if you have questions about what your course schedule will look like. But all the classes we're offering are for real, legit, real classes that will count.
Awesome. Thank you.
So next question, do I need to pay the CVIS fee right now if I take classes remotely?
Yeah. So if you are a new student to READ that has not yet initiated a CVIS record or an F1 status in the United States, you do not need to pay the CVIS fee right now. You will need to pay the CVIS fee likely either as you're applying for your visa or you're getting your visa. Definitely by the time that you arrive in the United States, you need to have an active CVIS fee paid.
If I do decide to attend physical college in spring 2021, do I need a new visa, and will the college give me a fresh I-20 form?
Mm-hmm. So we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but for new students to READ, an I-20 with new program start dates that reflect the spring start dates for the academic term, you will need that. And then if you already have a visa that have valid dates, like it's not expired yet, then you can use that. If you need to apply for a visa, then you will need to apply for your F1 visa in order to come into the US with the new I-20 for spring semester. If you are a returning READ student, you only need to get a new I-20 if the content in the I-20 has changed. So like if there was a name change, if there was a major change, if your anticipated end date, your graduation date has changed, then we would need to make a new I-20 for you. Otherwise, you can still use the same I-20 that you've had previously. And if you still have a F1 visa with valid dates, then you can also use that to enter the United States with the current I-20.
How will textbooks and perhaps lab kits be sent abroad to international students?
Yeah, this is a really good question. That's going to be a very course by course, faculty by faculty question. So work with the faculty for the course to determine how you're going to get a hold of your required text or your required supplies and equipment.
I'll just chime in to say that they're thinking about this. The library is thinking about this. We understand that there are sort of materials that are important for instruction. So we don't have all the answers about exactly what that'll look like, but we want to make sure people have the resources they need for sure. So
awesome. That's good to hear. Thanks.
So regarding arriving sort of halfway, can I arrive after the 31st, which is when the semester starts, but before the semester ends? And switch from an online mode to the hybrid model? Or do you have to wait until the spring semester?
Yeah. So I think Julie gave a nice description of how the courses are being designed and kind of indicated of what components like online versus in person they're going to include. And they're not really going to be designed to switch from one course to another midterm. So what you're enrolling in at the beginning of the term, that's what you'll carry through the semester. I think this question might have come in when we were still worried about the kind of most recent guidance from ICE and from SEVP that's been rescinded. The one point that I need more clarification from from CVIP or SEVP is if a student is taking, either a new student or a returning student is all online, will they be allowed to come into the United States to study? For new students, I don't believe that new students in all online courses are supposed to come into the United States to start their status according to CVIP. For returning students, I think that's more of a question mark of like, you are just returning to the US where you've been a student. There might be more allowance there. If that's something that you're thinking about or planning, get in touch with me because we want to make sure that it's in line with SEVP guidance, CVIP guidance, and also with the port of entries, so that Customs and Border Protection is on the same page, so that you're not getting one message from CVIP and then getting to a port of entry with a different message from the border officer.
Can international students who are unable to come to campus take classes from their home countries, and will there be any visa repercussions for doing this?
Yeah, so again, I think another question that we saw maybe from a few days ago before the guidance was rescinded, you may study online. You may study online entirely. Yeah.
And since many international students won't be able to return to the US, may we possibly have the option of earning READ credits at local institutions?
Yeah, really good question. What I'm recommending to students, I've heard from one student about this question, please reach out to Paul DeYoung. He is the director for international programs, which is like the outbound study abroad programs. So reach out to Paul, and then depending on where you're at, he'll be able to connect you with options that are available.
Sorry, chiming in again. Sorry. Yeah. So Paul can help you be sort of an officially studying abroad READ student at another institution. You can also take classes at another institution while you're taking time off, and then see about transferring those credits in. I'm not sure that that's the best option here, because you can take online classes at READ now, and that would probably make a lot of sense. But if there's another institution that's offering something in person in your home country, and that's what you really want to do, and we're not affiliated with them through our International Programs Study Abroad office, another potential option could be just attending there and transferring those credits back to READ. But you want to make sure they're going to transfer before you do it. The study abroad ones are pre-approved, the other ones are not. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Not? So,
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And then if you're a returning student, let's make sure to coordinate that with me, because that'll get into a weird, it's called concurrent enrollment, where you can meet full-time enrollment by taking courses at 2 different schools. Yeah, if that applies to you, you want to take credits from another non-READ affiliated school, get in touch with me before you commit to that. Okay, I'll give it back to Lucas.
What if my preferred courses aren't available online or through remote access?
Yeah, I would recommend giving this a couple more days. The new course schedule is coming out next week. So you'll see really what we have available and to offer, and then to work with your academic advisor in, if you are not able to find what you're looking for in the right mode of instruction.
How should I deal with conference-based courses from different time zones?
Mm-hmm. Let's see, do we have a note on that? So
Do you want me to go?
That would be great.
So I think that faculty are constructing courses with the reality of the pandemic in mind, which is not what happened in the spring. Spring was reactive, right? And so the reality that we may have folks who cannot join synchronously, or for whom that's going to be really hard because of time zone differences, faculty have already thought about that. So the solution will look different in different classes, depending on how many of you are in a different time zone, for example, and how synchronous versus asynchronous the class is by design. So you'll have to sit tight and stay tuned, but I just want you to rest assured that faculty are thinking about this in new ways now that they've had the chance and the time to do that. So I'm optimistic it will be better.
Thanks.
So what are the odds of READ having to go online only in the middle of the semester, resulting in international students having to leave the country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I think also was a big concern with that previous guidance that we've had rescinded. It's really difficult to predict if there's going to need to be a change to in-person components based on what's going on in Oregon in the fall. But as far as your F1 status, as the guidance stands now from the March guidance for international students, returning international students can study online from either inside or outside the United States, and you can maintain your F1 status, if Reed had to transition to completely online coursework for everyone, then that would be allowed for your F1 status to stay active.
I think I'm going to skip these next two just because they're quite similar to, or the answer you just said applies to both of them. So moving on to this one. As an international student, can I do 100% online without any impact to my credits?
Yeah. So I think that also is going to be answered by that course information that's coming on Monday and what's available for you. I guess one thing I'll add for your F1 record is that if there was a change to the length of time that it took for like your anticipated graduation date because of what was available to you in the mode of instruction that was available to you, then we can extend your I-20 end date, your graduation date for your F1 status based on that reason. But I think this will be a question that you'll be able to answer more fully after the course information is out on Monday.
So moving on to financial questions, will tuition fees stay the same?
Yes, at this time. And Julie, I don't know if you have more to say about this.
The only change that I'm aware of is that given that we're expecting folks who are able to leave at the end of the in-person part of the semester, at November 20th or so, since we're expecting that folks who are able to leave will, we're not charging them for the full amount of time that they normally would be here. So there's a discount on room and board based on a shorter semester. I fully expect that international students who want to stay will be able to stay, and so that maybe applies less to them. But otherwise, yeah, I think tuition and room and board are all otherwise the same.
Okay. Awesome, thanks.
So next question, is financial assistance available for students if they are forced to leave the country or have to try to enter the country?
Yeah. So I think my guess is that this was also a question that came before the guidance was rescinded. There is a link to the Reed COVID-19 financial resources that's in the ISS information page. So if you scroll down, look for that section on financial resources, there's some information there. I do also want to mention that if there's a student with really severe, urgent emergency financial needs, get in touch with me and then we work together to see what kind of resources are available so that all of our students can stay safe and well. Okay.
So ISS programming, how will the Interconnect Mentor program move forward during this time?
Yeah. So I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. We are still moving forward with the Interconnect Mentor program this year. There's going to be kind of a lot of creative solutions to how we are programming and getting mentors and mentees connected and having that face or that screen-to-screen time. So we're working on it. If you have suggestions, I'm open to them. Please share if you have great ideas. I'm also working with David Gelke that some of the returning students might know. So he'll be supporting with some of the matchings of mentors and mentees, and he's also helping to support orientation. And then kind of like we've discussed, the Interconnect Mentor program might be restricted based on what Oregon is allowing for gatherings at the time. And we're probably going to be restricted to only keeping student employees that are physically in the state of Oregon. So right now that's our guidance.
How will other international student events be affected?
Yeah, like I said, I really hope to offer, as close to a full kind of programming schedule, support to students, to returning students, to new students as we can. The physical gatherings are going to be subject to what we're allowed to do on the college campus, as well as what the state allows. So most likely it's going to be a lot of virtual or information sharing type of events that are most easy to get out, possibly small groups in person, outside. But if you have good ideas about this, this is definitely a time that I'm looking for kind of creative solutions or ideas, or what you feel like you want and need. Send those our way, please. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to college operations, what would school do to respond if one person gets diagnosed with COVID-19 after school starts?
Oh, you got to go ahead. Do you want to go?
I will defer to somebody who's been here longer than 3 weeks.
It's okay. So as I mentioned, we are going to screen folks upon arrival. There's plans to screen folks sort of randomly throughout the semester as well. And when I say folks, that includes students, faculty, and staff. So the possibility that someone tests positive is real. So if that person is living on campus, we will relocate them to isolation housing. So we've got a separate part of a dorm set aside. It is McNaughton, I'm pretty sure, and students will go there until they're well enough to return to sort of general residence population. If the person who's diagnosed is not living on campus but is otherwise a member of our community, we'll do contact tracing in order to get a sense of who else might need to quarantine because of potential exposure. So in addition to moving them, if they live on campus, we'll be in touch with folks to see who might need to change their behavior in order to stay safe. And then if a student needs to go into quarantine and cannot attend an in-person class anymore, the faculty are fully prepared to help you out and enable you to participate remotely so that you're not in any way tempted to come to class when you shouldn't, and that we can, again, keep everybody safe. So that's just like one part of our response. There is going to be a session on health and well-being that I would encourage folks who are particularly concerned about health and safety and what ifs to attend that session.
Thanks.
So for international students that have left boxes in storage at Reed and probably can't come to retrieve them, how long can we leave them in storage?
Yeah, please reach out to the department responsible for the storage. It sounds like that's Residence Life. Yeah.
Okay. Are plans for the spring semester already underway, and are we looking at starting the semester mid-January?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I'll mention on this is that the registrar's office, they have a lot of dates, like kind of relevant academic dates up already for the college on their website. Right now, the start date for the spring semester for classes starting is the 25th of January. That is a scheduled start date, but that could be scheduled to change after kind of this fall is reviewed and if any pertinent changes come up. I think that's the end of submitted questions.
So if, since there are no more of the pre-submitted questions, we can start taking follow-up questions and new questions that people might have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so I can look at the chat and all of you. So
looks like
I'm going to start.
Question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna ask this question that's in the chat, and if you can raise your hand when you do have a question, I'll unmute you and you can go ahead. So this first question, I have already filled out my DS-160 with the August 18th start date. So do I need to file another one or take action from my side? And also, if the I-20 start date is changing, will the I-20 number also change?
So for the visa application, the DS-160, leave that date as your I-20 mentions for the start of school as it is right now. And I say that because there's a chance that you might see like a miracle visa appointment open in the near future before I can get you an updated I-20. So if that happens, then you can go ahead and move forward with your visa application. And if you do get a visa approved for fall, that's okay to have that approved for fall. Once they put the visa in your passport, then I can change the program dates on your I-20 still and then you can use the visa that you have and the I-20 for the spring semester to arrive for the spring. When I update the program start dates on your I-20, it is continuous with your SEVIS record. So it will stay the same for your SEVIS ID number. When I make that change, it'll recognize it's just been kind of deferred or postponed as far as the SEVIS system. Yeah, that's a good question.
Diana, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Oh, sure. I have two questions actually. And the first one, I'm actually not sure if this is a good place to ask it. So, the end of spring semester, the last spring semester, like the way that the student work goes is that like people are allowed to work if they are not in Oregon. But I think somehow for the summer, the rules become like you can only work and get paid if you are physically in Oregon. So I just wonder if a student is enrolled in online classes but not in Oregon, like are they still able to do remote work for Reed?
No, even though we hung on to that for a minute at the end of the spring semester, it changed in the summer and it's staying changed. So you need to be in Oregon to work, whether it's remote work or physical work on campus, it needs to be in Oregon. That's what we've heard so far.
Okay. And my second question is, so just one thing I noticed about like the new update to the about the CVIS is that a CVP is that like it's not like a final court ruling. So I'm just thinking there might still be like just thinking the administration might still make new changes or some new updates regarding about immigration status or F1 status that makes it difficult or maybe impossible to stay in the US on the F1 status. Just I'm just assuming if that happens, and let's say if I still have a so visitor visa, like traveler or traveling visa, am I able to stay based on that visa instead of F1, which will like allow me to stay for like I believe 3 months?
Yeah. So real quick on the tourist visa or the B1, B2 visa, you should not plan to study in a degree seeking program while on a tourist visa or business visa. And you would not be able to change your status to a tourist visa and move through a degree seeking program. The government is pretty strict on that, and that's why they have the F1 degree seeking student F1 status. In terms of what we're going to see, for the fall, I feel pretty confident that the rescinding of the guidance that was given in July is going to stay based on the points that the lawsuit made, that the government originally or like immediately recognized and rescinded their position before the case even really was held. I have been checking recurringly the ICE website where that guidance has been posted. They took down the July guidance, so that's been taken off of their website. It's not there anymore. And the date has been updated to yesterday, that the page was last updated. And now all that is showing is the March guidance, and then the frequently asked question document is reflecting an update of yesterday. And that was the frequently asked questions from March. So in terms of like what kind of funny business they could try, they could try and make another move, but I think that the response from institutions in the United States, businesses in the United States, like representatives of congressmen, senators, and just like the general population was so strong and so swift. It's just not a very desirable, they would have to have an appetite for a really big fight to go down. because there was so much resistance to that bad policy that it was like a swift reversal. It was actually quite impressive that it was rescinded so quickly. And that even the federal judge really put the pressure on the US government to make an immediate like decision or case, because it was affecting students and institutions with such urgency. So, you know, I'm waiting for like more official word from ICE and from SEVP. They are a government institution. One of my favorite jokes is that government institutions around the world are all kind of the same. It takes a long time to get stuff done. Lines are long. And so that's, for me, the wait, that's what I'm attributing it to, is that it's a government process of administration to like now adjust to this recent court issue. So I don't know if that helps to alleviate much stress, but that's my take on it.
Oh yeah, thank you. And sorry, I thought I just had a third question. So because I work for CUS, and I had like, we receive a lot of like questions from international students who are currently out of US saying that they cannot log on to the Health portal from the HCC that needs to upload their files. I just wonder, like, if a student does not plan to attend orientation for the fall, like, is it obligation or required for them to submit the forms right now?
I think the health forms are pretty essential. So if folks are having a hard time getting access to the health portal, I would want to just solve that problem rather than be missing really critical information about incoming students. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Through your job in CUS, do you know if it's been resolved or referred, or should I try to follow up on that?
Yeah, I believe we should try to follow up on that, because it's, as far as I know, it's currently unresolved, especially in my home country, like due to firewall and all that stuff.
Yeah, and this is a question that came up in the spring as well, that there's certain access issues that we're still looking into. So okay, I'll see what I can find out. It's good to know that the health portal is one of the spots people can't get to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get to Nemo's question next. Julie, I know you had an answer in the chat, but just so it's on the recording, I'm just going to ask it, and you know, you can give the same answer. So his question is, some airlines or countries started requiring COVID-19 negative test results for passengers to board planes to enter the country. So would we be able to take those tests on campus, or do we need to find a hospital or an individual testing site to do the test if we need to fly back home?
It seems to me like this is a resource the HCC would want to provide if they were able to, but you'll have to refer to them directly. They're making the plan for however many tests we have and how we can use them. So it may also be ask us when you're ready, because they don't know how many they'll have gone through at that point, frankly. But I'm sure that they would also be willing to help folks figure out how to do that off campus if they weren't able to provide that. So.
Great. So next,
Can I pipe in really quick? I'm so sorry. I also just want to add to all of this, in this whole conversation that we're having, there's a lot of what ifs in these situations, and we recognize that there's a lot of this is really stressful. A lot of this is like, you know, you have a lot of these amazing questions, and I hope we all are under the understanding that there are an infinite number of what if questions that we could definitely tackle, and we want to be able to answer as many questions as we possibly can. A lot of these things are also up in the air. A lot of these things we're also trying to figure out as we go. So there's a term in my admissions office that we use a lot, and it's stay flexi. So it's just a fun way to say, you know, stay flexible. We're at, you know, the core of all of this is that we're going to absolutely answer as many questions as we can. We're going to get you some of these situations. We're going to have to just tackle them as they come, because they may or may not happen. And And it may be that we don't have the answer for you right now, but we will at a later time. One of the beauties of working or being at a college like Reed that is a little bit smaller is that we can work with individual and case-by-case situations a lot more easily than we could if we had like 17,000 students at the school. So I just also want to add that into the mix as well.
Thanks, Dev. Okay, I just want to say at this juncture, I haven't forgotten about people who have hands raised, but I'm trying to get to questions in order how they've been asked. So I will get to you eventually. But anyway, next we have Keenan's question, which is in the chat. So do students who stay outside the US for fall need a travel signature from the ISS?
Yeah, so good question. Maybe, depending on when your travel signature was signed last. So if your travel signature is a year older, it's going to be more than a year old on the date that you travel into the United States, you will need an updated travel signature. But right now we're allowed to issue electronic I-20s. We'll do that for sure for you. If we have time, I will just update an I-20, sign it with ink, and then send it to you with express mail so that you have that for your next travel into the US.
Okay, next, Param, you have your hand raised, so I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Param, and I just had two clarifications that I wanted to ask. One was, say, you know, I'm able to get my visa and I'm able to travel in the middle of the semester. Just to clarify, as I understood it, I won't be able to switch my courses to an in-person course, which would then mean that because of the CEVIP guidelines that I wouldn't be able to enter the States. Did I get that right? I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah, so for the new students entering to take only online classes, that wouldn't be in line with the guidance right now for the new students. I don't know, Julie, if you want to talk about like adding some components.
I think you could work with your advisor. If you think that there's a decent chance you could get here and you want to make sure that you have something in person, I'm about to get toddler bombed here, sorry. Then I think you could work with your advisor to pick out a class that had enough hybridity that you could do it online if you weren't able to come, and you could join in a more in-person capacity if you were able to join us. There's not going to be a ton of those. It's not going to be every class has that as an option, so you'd have to be kind of clever about it. But I think that would be the place to start if you thought there was a chance that you were going to come, because we don't really want you switching courses, but you might be able to switch the way you engage in a course.
Okay. Sweet.
Follow-up question from Diana about would the border officer know if you're coming to the United States to take fully online classes? If you are traveling mid-term, like, you know, middle of the fall semester, I think you would definitely get taken aside to the secondary inspection, which is like the kind of holding waiting room. And then I would expect that a border officer would probably ask why you're traveling to the US to take classes at that point in the semester, how much of the course is online versus in person. So I don't know if they would know. There's not like a way that they would be able to see into your registration at Reed, but I would advise against like making that travel without having a support letter and like a legitimate showing that you're taking in-person courses, or at least one.
June, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
This might actually kind of be obvious, but I just wanted to make sure because I'm kind of paranoid about everything at this point. So to my understanding, my civics record was transferred from my previous school to Reed. That doesn't, like, that's different from like the record being terminated, right?
Very different. Yeah.
Okay.
Very different. That's the right option that you want, is to be transferred.
Okay. So if I have it transferred, And if I don't come back to the US, because I'm outside of the States right now, so if I don't come back to the US for the fall, the 5 month rule wouldn't affect me. Is that correct?
Not in my understanding, because since you're carrying, if you're carrying the full-time course load for READ for the fall semester, participating in classes, working towards your READ degree, you're maintaining your F1 status. So in the fall, at the beginning of the semester, I'll register all of the students that are in a full-time course load and say, yes, they are attending READ classes, they're making progress towards their degree, they started on this date, this is the end of the semester. And that process, that registration process, will just continue your READ, it'll continue your CVIS record at READ, and your F1 status will be continuous.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So a question in the chat from Louise. For students unable to attend fall 2020, when will we get the new I-20? August-ish is my goal. In part because there's a lot of really high priority things going on right now that need to happen like this week and next week. And then also in part because I am trying to wait a little bit and see what the status for US embassies, consulates, and travel restrictions looks like in just a couple more weeks. So August-ish is my goal for updating new initial I-20s and the program start dates there. So a clarification from Param in the chat. Will the fee structure for on-campus housing or meal plans change for students that won't be on campus in the fall?
You don't pay room and board if you're not living on campus. Tuition is the same whether you live on campus.
Are there any other questions? I think we're just a couple minutes over, but I'm able to stay a little bit longer if anyone needs. Let's see.
Another question from Simon. Do I need to complete the health portal right now if I'm not coming for the fall?
Yeah, I think this is related to the challenges some people are having completing this stuff in the health portal. So I'm going to follow up on that and then ask the HCC to clarify with incoming international students what to do if they can't get in. Do they even need to do it if they're not here in person? I think they'll probably want your information, but I'll try to find out more and loop that back around. So,
oh, hi, Julie.
Stay tuned.
Hi, Julie. So this is what I understand from Taylor, and I think we should give out on the portal because
Okay.
cannot really troubleshoot since we are in the US and the problem occurs abroad. I think the best way would just to be like to arrange with the HCC nurses if the student can just email them to like email the form to them and help them.
Yeah,
putting
that
them.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great solution. Is another way of submitting the forms. The health portal is just real secure for good confidentiality and health-related privacy stuff. So, but I'm certain that they can come up with another solution. So, yeah, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions for the evening? I don't see any hands raised or any more coming in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we're kind of wrapping up and dismissed here. Thank you, Dev, for posting. Dev just posted a link to our ISS information page. I also wanted to remind everyone that's here if you're a new incoming student, to fill in the form about your plans for the fall. If you have not yet communicated with ISS and admissions or ISS and residence life about your plan to be in the United States or in on-campus housing, please do so, because we're trying to make room or make space and make sure that we have all of the housing that we need available for new incoming students, and then open that up to returning students as needed. So we want to make sure that we're planning correctly. If you have really specific like individualized questions on things that we talked about, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm doing my best to kind of keep up on those, but I'm a couple days on some emails behind. So I'm really sorry, but I do appreciate all the patience and all the support that I've gotten from everybody so far. Let's see.
Another question from Vivian. I want to make sure that if I'm going to apply for the visa for the fall, that I don't need to get a new I-20 form. Is that correct?
You don't. The I-20 form that you were issued originally by Dana for fall 2020, that will work for your visa application. Cool. All right. Thanks again to all my Portland people for changing your hours today. I really appreciate the extra help being here. And then I will look forward to seeing maybe some of you again or a new set of students tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, depending on time zones. So thank you again. Send suggestions or recommendations, what you would like or what you're looking for the fall. I'm brand new too, so I'm open to ideas. Cool. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.